If you are on the fence about the JoeTisserie, today's chicken shawarma recipe is going to put you over the top. Let's get started. Hey, I'm James from Smokin' Dad Barbecue, and today is about some amazing chicken shawarma that we're going to cook on the Kamado Joe Big Joe using our JoeTisserie accessory. Now, if you saw my review of the JoeTisserie, you know it took a while for me to warm up to it. And that's just because, like the Joe itself, there's a learning curve. And some of those things that threw me off the first few cooks is, where do you place your fork on the spit? I'm going to show you a little trick on how to line that up. It's also how to adjust your vents, because the JoeTisserie gets more air since it's not sitting in that latch, and we need to adjust for that to not end up going too high of a temperature. And speaking of temperature, probably the most important thing is our strategy. And so with the JoeTisserie, if we're not careful, we can have way too much heat and we get a really amazing looking outside of our chicken shawarma, but we could be closer to rare on the inside near that spit, and that's not something that we want. So the secret to overcome all of this is going to be how we bank our coals so we can control our heat, how we position our forks on the spit, as well as our temperature strategy in terms of holding it at 300 to 350 degrees Fahrenheit is great, and then we'll crank the heat at the end if we want to get any more color on the outside of our shawarma. Let me take you inside earlier today, because we have two things to do. About 3 hours ahead of time, we want to marinate our chicken thighs. And so this is a really simple recipe, just 3 ingredients. We've got olive oil, some lemon juice, and some garlic. And we want to turn that in the bag every hour or so ahead of when we want to cook. Then I'll take you back inside. We're going to show you how we're going to assemble our spit and set up our Big Joe for today's cook. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is figure out where on our spit we want our fork. So let me just take you outside really quick, and I'll show you how we're going to line that up. Plus, we'll take the opportunity to get our fire started so that our Big Joe is heating up when we pop back in here to assemble our shawarma. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is figure out where we want our fork on our JoeTisserie. So to do that, I'm just going to slide it into position. And then with it undone, I can slide the fork to where we want to line it up. Now, to make this easier every time, if you're going to do this regularly, you can get a hacksaw or something like that and just make a little bit of a notch so you know where to line it up, so you're not guessing once you're inside. But since I'm always doing something a little bit different, I want to give myself some extra space today, since we're going to be doing a lot of shawarma. So we'll slide this to about where we want it, our base to end, and then just go ahead and tighten that into position. Great. Set that aside. Next thing we're going to do before we go and build our shawarma inside, take a few minutes, we want to take the opportunity to start getting some heat in our Big Joe. So I'm going to add just a little bit more Jealous Devil. And then I'm going to rake these towards the back. Just easier with gloves sometimes. And then start our fire. Okay, our bottom vent is already open, so we'll just open our top vent here and let that come up to temperature. Let's go back inside and assemble our spit. Okay, now that our Big Joe is heating up and we know where we want to line up our fork, I'm just going to show you a little trick for how to make assembly a little bit easier and reduce the mess that might get everywhere. So the first thing I like to do is just get 1 or 2 garbage bags and give us a bit of a working space. The next thing we're going to do is, if you have a clamp, you can use any clamp, but larger ones are a little bit easier because they're more stable, is we're going to clamp our spit in the upright position, so that way it's really easy to go ahead and drop everything on. So let's just put the bag through the bottom here so that we have coverage for our clamp and the bottom part of our spit. Okay, so now we have a nice stable base for our spit. Let's go ahead and start building our layers. So all I'm going to do for this is alternate direction each way. So we'll put one on sort of east-west and the next north-south. Any opportunity we can, just trying to catch a bit of those forks just to help hold everything together. Great, this is ready to go outside. Let me just clean up. I'll meet you out there. Okay, we are out to about 300 degrees, which is plenty good to get our shawarma on. We'll just go ahead, pull it off here, slide it into our power unit, drop it on, turn it on, and then I'm just gonna go clean up, grab our meter probe, and then show you the vent settings as well, which are a little bit tighter when you're using the JoeTisserie because we get that much more airflow. All right, let's go ahead and add our probe. I'm just gonna pause the JoeTisserie for a second. And since there's lots of spots with a little bit of separation, you're not gonna get a perfect reading, but this will still help us have a general idea where we're at. The only thing we don't wanna do is go down towards the metal probe, as that'll give us an inaccurate reading. So I'm just gonna look for some thicker parts and go straight in the middle. Right here, looks great. Turn our JoeTisserie back on, and we are in business. Okay, for our vents, on the bottom draft door vent, I'm just about a pinky finger's width, which is a little bit tighter than normal, but again, as the JoeTisserie sits on your gasket and is not airtight, there's a little bit of room for air to come in and out there. It's going to breathe a little bit better on its own. And so that's why I've got that in the very tight one finger position. And on the top vent, I'm gonna go about 50% between the first line and the second line. Okay, so now that we've got everything set up, I'm just gonna set up the temperature tracking on our meter probe so we can keep track of everything wirelessly. And this is one of the many reasons I love the meter, is because we can use it on the JoeTisserie. Normally, spinning with wires, we'd last about maybe 30 seconds before it was all tangled up and we were pulling the control unit into the Kamado itself, but no such issue with the meter probe. I'm guessing we're gonna have about an hour or so before we need to worry about anything. So sit back, relax. I'll see you in a little bit when it's time to go to Inferno mode and get a little bit more color on the outside of our shawarma if it looks like it needs it. Okay, let's take a look at our shawarma, see how we're doing. According to the meter, it says we've got about 20 minutes remaining. And so what I want to do now is just do a few spot checks on the doneness in different parts of our shawarma. And if they're all reading the same, I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and pull out that probe, leave the dome here open just to help build that fire, and start working on building our outside charred bits a little bit more. Now, I don't want to expose the meter probe to more than 500 degrees Fahrenheit, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that out if the temperatures are the same everywhere else, just so that we don't get too high of a heat for our probe. Okay, so let's check a few other spots here for their doneness. Just turn off our JoeTisserie. 156, 159, 163. So I think we are even all the way around. So let's go ahead and turn that back on. And on the next rotation here, we'll just grab our probe. Done its job. So this final temperature, we want to get to about 170 degrees. So we've got about 10 degrees to go. And so now I just like to get a little bit more texture on the outside of our shawarma. So we'll get a few little crispy bits, as well as everything cooked evenly all the way throughout. So now we just get to sit back and enjoy Inferno mode. Okay, so now for one of my favorite parts, we're going to rake some of those coals a little bit more directly underneath our shawarma, just to help finish getting that charred goodness on the outside. So we had them on the back for cooking sort of indirectly, but now we're just going to pull that heat right into the center. And you can't do this without gloves. Like immediately, even through the gloves, these are rated for 900 degrees. You just feel that heat. So that will make a big difference, just pulling that pile forward, that 6 to 8 inches. So again, we're going to continue to leave our dome open just so we can keep an eye on everything, as well as finish getting some of that reaction from the fresh charcoal and drippings and everything coming down, flavoring our shawarma back on the spit. So I think we're maybe 2-3 minutes away from pulling this off. And just like that, we are fast approaching the finish line of another awesome cook. So I just checked the temperature. We're right at 170. The outside has gotten a little bit of that char and texture that we wanted. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this off, take it inside, slice it up. I'll rejoin you in a minute for a taste test. All right, so time for my favorite part of the video. Let's go ahead and do a taste test. Now, we are doing these inside some wraps, which are just finishing up in the oven in the family, so I'm not gonna bring that outside, but I am gonna taste our hero ingredient here, our chicken shawarma, and let you know how we did. I'm hungry, I'm gonna get a proper bite. Let's get in here. Boy, oh boy. This is so good. And so ingredients and flavoring was really simple. And so we're getting a bit of that garlic and some of that bright, fresh sort of citrus from the lemon. And man, do we get the perfect amount of flavor from our live fire cooking with the JoeTisserie. And so that texture is just mixed in there with our charred bits. You get a little bit of crunch and crisp, followed by a rich velvety bite from the rest of our chicken. It doesn't get any better than this. I'm so excited to go inside and get to work on the rest of dinner. Anyways, I hope you really enjoyed today's video. If you did, please let YouTube know by smashing that like button, and let me know by hitting subscribe to catch future videos. Anyways, that's it for today. I'm James from Smokin' Dad BBQ signing off, and remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.